Welcome in to another episode of the Laser Bros podcast. We are your hosts, Logan and Luke Lazarchik, and today we are joined by NFL Network's Jeff Chadiha. Jeff, thanks for coming on the show today, and we appreciate you taking some time out of your jam-packed schedule to join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Not that jam-packed, though. I'm on vacation, so a lot of time.
Yeah, and you were just at the Super Bowl last week. How was covering that, and what was your experience like with that?
It's always fun. God, I've done 25 of these now, and so the first time I've ever been in Vegas for one, that was an experience in and of itself. 8 days in Las Vegas. I'm not the man I used to be. When I was younger, it was about 2-day experience, so 8 days was a lot. But it's always great to see a lot of friends. You catch up with people. A lot of ways, it's like a big convention, and then the game goes on, and it was a great game. So I've never had the experience of seeing what it's like when you're in a community that wins it, what it's like, that the day of. But when you're there, it's always a blessing. So I never take it for granted.
Yeah, I know. We were talking while you were there. The weather was pretty crappy. You were telling me it was raining the whole time.
Yeah. It's like you look at the pool. I was staying at the Cosmopolitan, which is a pretty, swanky hotel, and it was like 50 degrees and rainy. You look at the pool, which was heated to 80 degrees, and you see these lifeguards out there in like blankets, shivering, hoping somebody would come out to they were ready to have a party at the pool that week. They didn't get the party, and I don't gamble, so and can't gamble anyway with the NFL, experience here. So a lot of Netflix got watched that week until about 9:00 at night.
Well, I'm happy that you got to see a Chiefs victory. And for today's episode, we will be talking about the Chiefs offseason, how it kind of play out, kind of focus on Chris Jones and Legere Sneed. Mm-hmm. And then we'll shift over to our free agency predictions with a few key players and see what their landing spots are. So let's start the Chiefs offseason. Chiefs winning back-to-back Super Bowls. Does that change anything? Do you think the Chiefs, because they're going for a three-peat, that kind of changed how they go about free agency and all that? Do you think they try to go all in for next year, or just still playing, the long road game?
I don't think it changes. I don't think they go all in. They tried that a few years ago, and it didn't quite work out. And, they wound up trading away Tyreek Hill a couple of years later. And, it's if you want to always be in the conversation for a championship, you have to make some sacrifices. That's a lesson that people should have learned from the New England Patriots. They were always willing to part with popular players, productive players, Pro Bowl players, when they still had value, and they were able to turn that and flip it into draft picks, cap space, and continue to build a viable roster. It's always attractive to try to make history, but again, there's no guarantee that just because you have the same people back, that you're going to have the same circumstances and the same results. This is a league where injuries happen all the time. Attitudes can change. I think sometimes people underestimate how much goes into winning a championship and how much everybody on the roster has to really contribute, not just the players, but the coaches, the training staff, the front office people. Everybody has to have a really good year. And it's just, when you look at teams that have been there and not gotten back, usually it's injuries, usually it's money, usually it's something that gets in the way, attrition that gets in the way of it happening. So, I think they've been smart about it. They've won a championship without Tyreek Hill. They've won a championship with, some people that, this past year, you didn't think that they were going to win with the receivers they had and the way they performed, but they found a way to get it done. So ideally, you're always in position and then you can capitalize, but you can't be in position unless you're willing to make some sacrifices.
I know that we're going to talk about Chris Jones and Sneed, but do you think, because I think that it was reported that the cap may be at 250 this year, that is like 8 more than expected. I may be wrong in that number. Do you think that affects anything with keeping those two at all?
Not really, because they're at premier positions. And whenever you're talking about premier positions in the NFL, you're talking about spending a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And, the reality is, the Chiefs are a little bit different in that they have a lot of money tied into non-premier positions. So they pay their tight end a good amount of money. They pay a guard, Joe Tooney, a good amount of money. They play defense. They pay Chris Jones a lot of money. To be honest with you, I mean, edge rusher is a lot more of a premium than defensive tackle. But those guys at those positions have been so good and so productive and so helpful to their championship ambitions that it's been money well spent. So yeah, an extra $8 million is not going to make a huge difference. I mean, ultimately, the market for a Chris Jones is going to be $30 million plus a year. It's probably going to be $60 to $80 million in guaranteed money. The market for L'Jarius Sneed, if you look at what Charvarius Ward got leaving here, I think it was like $13 million a year for 3 years. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed is going to be around 20. I can promise you that. And so those are numbers that, yeah, you can play with the quarterback with Patrick Mahomes' contract a little bit to create space, but ultimately it's tough for a lot of different reasons with those guys to make those kinds of investments.
Yeah, personally for me, I've been kind of torn on the situation of what the Chiefs should do with these two players. I think for me, I'd rather keep Chris Jones than Sneed, and I know the price tag will be much heftier for keeping Jones. But for Sneed, we've seen the Chiefs draft and develop corners, and Sneed was a fourth-round pick himself. So I think that it may be smart for the Chiefs to maybe tie up Chris Jones. I want to give him like a 4-year deal. I'll probably do like a 2-year deal, maybe with a third year that's cheaper. So you kind of inflate the numbers the first 2 years, so it's easier to get out of his contract the third year. But for Sneed, I think it just moving on from him and letting McDuffie kind of inherit that quarterback one role for the Chiefs.
Yeah. Chris is interesting because of his age. And the Chiefs historically under Brett Veach as the general manager have not been willing to invest a lot of money in guys who are over 30. And there really is nobody that they've done it with up to this point. Even what Travis is playing on a pretty discounted contract for what he's worth. And so there's a risk there. There's a risk of injury coming with that because he is so much older. Yeah, they would want to do a shorter deal and he would want a shorter deal, but the cap ramifications of that are really, you can't spread that money out now.
That's true.
So you're talking about, $30 million hitting your cap, for the next couple of years that he's on it. There's no real relief there. And L'Jarius Sneed, a lot of people don't know this, but he's got some kind of a congenital knee issue that has been the issue that the Chiefs have known about. People forget that he didn't practice most of training camp and then went out and started playing on it. But he's playing on a leg that is a little bit medically compromised. So that gives them a little bit of a edge in understanding how to negotiate. But again, when you go out on the open market, some people may overlook that and say, well, you were an all-pro level corner. Here's a ton of money for you to come in and play for us right now. I mean, there's a lot of teams out there who are contending who could use my hometown team, the Detroit Lions. I guarantee you would be willing to pay L'Jarius Sneed a lot of money to come in and play for them right now. So that's what makes it tougher. But yeah, I if I'm picking between the two, I'm going after Chris Jones. I just don't know if you're Brett Veach, if you have the stomach for what that cost is going to ultimately end up being. He's the best free agent on the market.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's interesting with like the franchise tag because March 5th is the date, I think. And assuming that a deal with neither Jones nor Sneed gets done by the 5th, do you place the tag on Jones hoping to trade him and get some value for the asset because he is the best free agent? Or do you put on Sneed and then just sort of guarantee? I think that's a very interesting which way they go with that, assuming that they don't sign either to a deal before the deadline.
Well, I think if either one of them gets franchised, it's likely to be Jones, even though it's a heavier number. And again, that number really hamstrings them in terms of what they can do as far as flexibility, go out and sign players. The way NFL works, you can't sign players without having the money available to sign them. And so if you're taking up 30, they're 15 under the cap.
Was it 32 million? Was 32 million the cap? Was
the
32 million the franchise tag?
Yeah, 32 million. And so they're 15 under right now. So you're talking about going down to being 17 under just by giving him the franchise tag. And again, you can work with Mahomes' deal, but that probably leaves you about 10 million to play with in the open market when you still want to probably improve your receiver room. You're going to have to find a left tackle again. You're going to have to find some other players on defense. They could potentially start the season with 5 different starters on defense if you count Charles Omenihu with the knee injury. So I would think Chris Jones would be the easier one to franchise, would be the more desirable one to franchise because he's going to have more value and you could probably flip him for picks. But again, it's a little bit of a dangerous game with a player in his position and knowing that teams are smart. They know that, okay, you went through this last year with him. He sat out all of the offseason and the first game of the season. they may not be willing to pony up picks as quickly as the Chiefs would want.
Before we move to our free agency predictions, what are you guys' gut call on Jones and Sneed? Where do you think they kind of land? Do you think Jones gets tagged and traded? Do you think Sneed just walks regardless? Do you think there's even a chance that Chiefs keep him?
I think Sneed walks. I think he's going to. Then they won't tag him, and he'll be gobbled up pretty fast in the open market. I think I'm torn on the Jones one because there's so many things that would suggest they wouldn't tag him, the age and the money, but there's also potential value of getting picks back for him. So I don't know, man. I think they're both gone, to be honest with you. I think ultimately the money factor, just because Jones can go on. The combine is going to be a lot of agents talking to a lot of different teams, and they're going to have a number in mind for him. If they come back, if his people come back and say, we want whatever, 3 years, $100 million, I don't see how the Chiefs want to play the ball in that territory.
Mm-hmm. I definitely think Sneed is gone. I think when it comes to having a 1-2 cornerback duo, I feel like McDuffie loses value if Sneed leaves. Just a personal opinion, I feel like a cornerback is more valuable when they have another one because then it's more locking down a field. But I still feel like he's gone. And then the optimist in me, Logan's the Chiefs optimist between the two of us, I guess. But I'd say the optimist in me says I just can't see Chris Jones gone after this season. And I don't know, because I also don't see a team ponying up a first-round pick or something like that. So I think my gut tells me it's a franchise and just one final year, and then he's off wherever he goes after this season.
Yeah, for me, I agree with both of you. Sneed's definitely gone. Mm-hmm. Jones, winning back-to-back, I feel like puts more pressure on the team to keep Jones just from a fan base standpoint, but I think you have to play it smart at the same time. I wouldn't mind a tag and trade if you could find a trade partner, but I just don't know what type of deal you'd get from that. Because, let's say the Bears show interest and want to trade for him, I doubt they'd trade the 9th overall pick, which is something I would want. But they want to trade that, so it's just tough. I don't know. I think we end up keeping Chris Jones on a franchise tag this year.
I hope so, because just going for a three-peat, that'd be so nice.
Yeah. The question is, would he be happy?
Yeah,
on that tag.
That's true.
One thing to tag him. Another reason, a lot of guys don't like playing on the tag, and he could.
32 mil is nice though, because is that above Donald?
It's above. The problem is that it pretty much restricts him from getting the kind of money he wants the following season, right? So now you're kind of like, okay, what's my value? Mm-hmm. His peak value is right now. Anything he does moving forward, he's getting less money from the open market.
Mm-hmm. So let's move on to our free agency predictions. And so we'll focus on a few quarterbacks and some receivers and running backs. And we'll start with the quarterbacks. The first quarterback that I would like to talk about is Kirk Cousins. Where do you guys think he lands?
I think he stays where he's at right now. That's really the vibe I've gotten all throughout, since he got hurt. Now, I think if he hadn't gotten hurt, he'd be gone. But because he was hurt, because he has history with the franchise, Justin Jefferson's a big fan of his. Mm-hmm. There is a lot more flexibility in the negotiation now because he's been hurt. And so I anticipate him being back there. Look, they won the division a couple of years ago. There's a lot of – once guys get to this point in their careers, it's hard to move around unless you're getting like a sweetheart kind of deal that like Tom Brady got or Peyton Manning got when he went to Denver, where you're just walking into a championship situation. I don't see that kind of situation out there for him immediately. So I expect him to be back in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. No, most of my picks, same with yours, Logan, they're obviously we don't have inside information, but it's what we think plus what I think is a good fit. And I like the Raiders. If you get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo, they'll have a ton of cap. I think you've cut Renfro. That's a ton of cap. And then you're coming into a team with now it seems like a great culture. It would be weird. Kirk Cousins is the weirdest person to play in Las Vegas, but I feel maybe that's something they need. But if he'd have Devontae and Jacoby, Michael Mayer, the offensive line it's iffy. I think he could go in with the Raiders and contend as the second best team in the AFC. I mean, Pierce is talking about how they have the Chiefs.
Second best? Did you say second best team in AFC?
AFC West. My bad.
Okay, I was like, mine.
Yeah, well, my bad.
Yeah.
But AFC West. But Pierce talked about how they have like the what? I forgot how he
The
used
Mahomes
phrased
rules,
it.
the Jordan
Yeah,
rules.
so I don't think they have that, but I think the Raiders. I mean, if you put Kirk Cousins with Devontae and Jacoby, I mean, Mayer may go off because you saw Hawkinson. I think the Raiders is a great fit.
I have the Vikings as well. I think for Kirk Cousins at this point, he wants to compete for a championship. And I'm not saying Minnesota is the best spot to do that. But if you're going to the AFC side, especially what you said, AFC West, I mean, you have to deal with Mahomes and Herbert just to win a division. I don't think he's going to think about that. I think Vikings, he's been in Minnesota for years now. He has a family there. I think he's comfortable in that spot. So I have him staying with Minnesota.
I feel like it's just like, will Minnesota want to keep him or will they want to start young? And I think,
the price tag.
They have to trade up.
That.
They have to trade up in the draft to get there, I think.
Yeah, I would think they would draft a quarterback and sign him. That would be the perfect situation for him.
Okay.
Next quarterback, and I'm curious where you guys have this player going, Justin Fields.
Yeah, you know what? It's GM's, an ex-GM said this to me a couple of weeks ago about quarterbacks, and he said, if you think you have one, then you don't have one. So it's if they're still trying to figure out what Justin Fields is in year 4, it's probably better to start thinking about moving on for him and resetting the clock. Their defense has played well. They've got a pretty good receiver there, and then DJ Moore. They're in a position where they could easily draft a guy, even this year, contend for a playoff spot. If not next year, be what the Lions have become, what Green Bay became. So, unfortunately, I've defended him a lot, Justin Fields, because I think he's had a lot of different coordinators and coaches be in his ear. But I imagine he's better off playing somewhere else. Atlanta is a place that I pick for him just because he's from there. They've got a lot of weapons. The defense was the top 10 defense they had this year. So they spent money in free agency, and he could immediately jump in there and make a big difference on a staff where you've got, Raheem Moore's down there, who's a defensive-minded coach. I think it could work in Atlanta, give up some picks and get him down there and have him reset his career.
I also have Atlanta. I was so frustrated this year watching Desmond Ridder for personal reasons. It was I got
a fantasy team.
I had some parlays, division stuff, which a lot righted on the Falcons, and they did not help. But I also like Fields to Atlanta. I mean, they have a lot of weapons. I've never been the biggest Fields fan. Logan and I have argued about him a lot. We just argue about quarterbacks, and I've lost a lot of the arguments lately, so I'm kind of taking this win. But I like Falcons. You have him and Bijan can be kind of crazy together. You get Kyle Pitts if they use him, which I assume they will, and then Drake London. And I feel like that's what's being discussed, and it just feels like momentum is going to Falcons and Justin Fields.
Yeah, I also have Falcons. I think it makes a lot of sense. There's a report today that it would take like a second, a 4th round pick to get Fields.
That's
I think for Falcon, I don't mind giving up that. Like, he was a former top 11 pick. I'm not, especially for Falcons. If you can keep your top 10 pick, I think they go get edge rusher. But for Fields, I think it's a great fit. Like you guys said, the weapons, offensive line is really good, and their defense is really good. I think they have everything there for a quarterback to succeed. And he hasn't really had the greatest protection. And I know sometimes he holds the ball a lot to take some of those sacks. But I think Falcons are a great fit.
And they get the 2nd round pick from Jags if Ridley stays, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that helps with trading.
Last quarterback, and this is another one I'm like really interested to see what you guys say. Russell Wilson. He's not a free agent, but he may soon be a free agent.
Yeah. Well, and the thing with him is that he's going to be pretty cheap because Denver's carrying most of his salary up to $39 million. So he can be had for a lot less. This is what people have been saying a lot, and I think it makes sense. I'm thinking Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh or Washington for various reasons, but Pittsburgh makes sense just because they're going to be drafting lower. They're not crazy about Kenny Pickett. They've gotten rid of, Mason Rudolph is leaving, and Trubisky has not been much of a option as a number 2 guy. So they give it a shot and see see what Russell can bring to it. There's still a team that wants to win with defense, that wants to run the football effectively. If they had Russell Wilson this year, they probably would have won 12 games. They certainly would have played better offense. And part of me just feels like he's still got some left in the tank. So I'll put him in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
My prediction sort of correlates with my first one. I think the Vikings, assuming Kirk Cousins leaves, I think it's for the same reason where they draft a quarterback and assuming you don't get the first 3, it's McCarthy, Penix, or Nix. And then they draft Russell Wilson. I think good quarterback to help. I believe he'd mentor someone. And then it's a good quarterback for competition. And it's kind of, I don't think that's really been brought up, but I was just looking at it. I was like, I think that could be a nice fit. He has a quirky personality sometimes, but I still think he could be a good leader for a quarterback.
Yeah, I have the Steelers as well. To be honest, I think it's Steelers or nothing for Russell Wilson next year. I really don't see any other fits. I think the Steelers should go for Justin Fields, but I don't think they're going to do it. So I think Russell Wilson lands there. And Steelers, I just don't think they're that aggressive of an organization trying to hit the big shot on a quarterback. So I think they kind of play it safe and I guess give Kenny Pickett competition at the same time. But I mean,
low risk, right? There's no money.
Exactly.
Involved.
Yeah. And as long as Russell Wilson takes care of the ball, I wasn't really impressed with Russell Wilson last year. I know everybody said he improved from the last year, but it was a lot of just checking the ball down and making 1 or 2 just incredible throws a game. But other than that, it was not sustainable in my opinion.
Yeah, it's kind of. He could still do something. I still think he can do something.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I just think it's Steelers for him.
I wonder if
there's somebody yesterday on TV that said the Jets, which I thought was dumb.
No. Well, I wonder if he's going for sure starter, and I guess
I don't think Russell Wilson wants to sit behind somebody.
Yeah, but if you go to Steelers though, don't you feel pretty confident that you can beat out Kenny Pickett?
Yeah. I'd hope you beat out Kenny Pickett.
Yeah. And they've got good weapons there. I mean, the tight end's a good player. They got 2 good. They probably young receivers could use a veteran quarterback in the room who can give them some insight on how to work out and how to train. So, I don't think it's. I agree. I don't see it as being he's going to have all these options. I think it's going to be 1 option, maybe 2 at the most, and that's it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Let's shift over to the receivers. The first receiver we'll talk about, T. Higgins.
He's staying in Cincinnati. It's all this talk about him getting off on the open market. Joe Burrow said, I want him here. That probably closed the door on any kind of conversations the Brown family would have or ideas they may have of getting rid of him. You can franchise him. He's going to want a lot of money. So even if he gets out, you're talking about at least $25 million plus a year, given what the market's been. And so I just don't feel like, 1, he's going to be allowed to get those opportunities, and 2, this team has at least 1 more good year run in them with this current group of guys, and Joe Burrow wants him. He's staying in Cincinnati.
Do you think there's any chance that they tag and trade him, or do you think that it's just a franchise tag and they keep him?
No. I mean, they've got a ton of money in salary caps. I don't even know what it is. They've got almost $60 million in salary cap space.
Yeah. And I think they can move on from Joe Mixon, too, to free up some money as well.
Yeah,
so.
That's the bigger thing. Yeah, so it's really a matter of do they want to play that game? And they've drafted some replacements for him, but I mean, he's coming out. He's 4 years into the league and still pretty good. And
he's only 25. So
you got him and Chase together. Why would you give that up right now?
No, yeah. My only question is does he get a deal or is it just franchise tag? Because I also have him Cincinnati. I think that's probably the easiest one. Does he get franchised and sign a deal, or is it just franchise? That's my only question.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yep, it's a clean slate. We all have Bengals. I think, for people to say the Chiefs and all that, it just wouldn't even make sense for just money-wise for the Chiefs. No. So, I have the Bengals as well, and like Jeff said, they're in a win-now window, and so I think with this current group of guys, you keep T. Higgins as your number 2. And they're going to let Tyler Boyd walk, so just let Higgins stay there. Next receiver, Mike Evans.
Another guy who I feel is going to stay where he's at. He's 30 years old. He was playing the give me a new deal at the start of this past year, and it didn't happen. But he spent his entire career with Tampa. He's a big fan of Baker Mayfield. I know his agent, his family. I feel like they would get a deal done. They wouldn't even have to get to the franchise tag, option, because the way he played, he showed what he can do. Maybe gives a hometown discount there to stay put. You're getting a no state income tax in Florida. All those things that players like. If he gets out there, he's going to want a lot of money too. He's going to want about $20 million plus. And so the way he's played, the way what he's been to that franchise, I imagine he stays where he's at.
This is kind of a bold one that I have, and I bet Logan could predict what I'm going to say with team, but I like Carolina just because I think they have to be. You have to get Bryce Young someone, and you have the OC connection. Who's Dave Canales is now their head coach. They don't have like the biggest cap space, but they could probably create some. And my gut just tells me that with that they just overpay him, and they just give him a bag. It's like Bryce Young needs someone. He can't be throwing to Adam Thielen's probably gone. And he already has a Super Bowl ring. So this may be my boldest one. But I like this one a lot. This is
go join a 2-win team. 30 years old.
That's the one problem with it. That's a serious problem. But I still like it.
I absolutely disagree with that. I think Mike Evans, this is probably his last chance to get a payday, but at the same time, I think he still wants to win. I actually have the Houston Texans landing Mike Evans. I think he coming back to Texas. He went to college there. I believe he's from Galveston.
Yep.
I think, and they have tons of cap space. I think close to $60 million in cap space. And I think with CJ Stroud, you try to surround him with as many offensive pieces as possible. And I think with CJ Stroud, they won the division last year. I say you keep playing aggressive and get the best receiver possibly in free agency.
I just don't think they need receivers though. I think you have like Nico Collins is a stud, and Tank Dell's a stud, and Noah Brown works, and Mechie's young, and I don't know. I just don't. I think it'd be. I wouldn't like to spend a ton of money
next year. And before the season, we didn't really view Nico Collins as a stud receiver, like you said. I think C.H. Stroud elevated a lot of.
Well, yeah.
Do you trust the injuries though? Because he's always got like a hamstring ear or some kind of.
Exactly.
That's soft tissue stuff going on.
Yeah. And Tank Dell got hurt last year. I know it was a freak injury, but I think probably to add as many. I mean, Mahomes and Chiefs, they added as many receivers as possible that they could, even if it was overpaying them. So I think if you can get Mike Evans, get another big target for Stroud, I would go in for Evans.
The hometown angle, I like that part of it. Yeah, he is right down the road. Grew up right down the road from Houston, so that wouldn't be a bad. I could see it working for that reason. But it's also, I agree with your brother, though. A lot of guys are already catching footballs for him.
Yeah, could it like hurt their – I just don't know if it could hurt their development at all. Because like you saw
that's something I thought about.
In Seattle, I mean, I think a lot of people think he could have been better. But he was behind two veteran receivers. And then it'd be sort of a battle. Because I think Mike Evans is a stud for who is sort of left out, Nico or Tank.
Well, Nico may be out the door next year, so maybe Mike Evans fills that role.
I like Nico. I know he gets hurt, but I like Nico Collins.
This is an interesting one as well. Michael Pittman.
He's interesting because his ceiling is not as high as the other guys. And so he's not a speed guy. He's more of an underneath catch, 80 passes for 1,000, 1,000, 1,100 yard type guy, average like 12 yards a catch. I feel like he's going to be overpaid I think the Colts probably won't resign him, given what the market is going to be like for him. And if I'm thinking about a place where he ends up going, I could see him in Atlanta. We need another receiver to go along with Drake London. I'll go there. I'll say Atlanta with Drake London to kind of round that group out. Justin Fields become a powerhouse offense.
That'd be an interesting fit. I didn't even think about that. But
I like that.
Yeah.
I have Colts just because I like Colts, but now I'm going to stick with Colts. But I did like the Atlanta one.
It makes sense. Colts make a lot of sense.
He played pretty well with each Richardson and Minshew. I mean, he has that low ceiling, and because they have Pierce, who's kind of I don't think he has that high. Then Downs is good, but I just feel they keep him and then they stick with those three. But I could see them moving off and then maybe getting a young guy. But gut tells me Colts for now. I do like the Atlanta one.
I think Colts just end up tagging him. I don't think because, like Jeff said, I think if you're going to sign him, you'd have to overpay him. So I think they just end up tagging him and let him play out another year. But I don't know if Colts are a long-term team for Pittman. I think next year he may get paid big, if not this upcoming offseason. But with Richardson, I mean, I would like to keep my number one receiver with my second-year quarterback that only played 4 or 5 games last year. So
it's a fair point.
I think tagging Pittman would probably be my prediction. Another receiver who I think this one has a lot of risk, Marquise Brown.
Yeah, that's an understatement. A lot of risk. I don't even know. Like someone said, the comp for a 5'9", 180-pound speed receiver. There aren't too many guys out there who make a living doing that in this league. And the fact that hasn't really made his name at 2 different places in under 5 years is not a great indication. I thought he would work better with Kyler Murray. Obviously, he got hurt, and Murray got hurt, and so that kind of set things back. But I think he's one-dimensional. I don't think he brings a lot to the table outside of being a speedy receiver. He's almost like a better version of McCole Hardman. And so, it's kind of funny. I could see him being a Chief for that reason, just because having a speedy guy who can take the top off of defense would be nice if they get rid of MVS and Hardman. You know what? I think he's got a down market. I'll put him with the Chiefs.
I looked around a lot for this one. So I had one that I don't think would happen, but I thought about it, and I think the fit would be nuts. The Rams, and he just replaces Atwell, and then you have Marquise Brown as your third guy, and I think that'd be crazy. But and they have cap space, but I just don't think it happens. But I was trying to think because he probably won't be paid a lot. And maybe a receiver needy team that's willing to take a shot. And so I put the Bills. My one fear is maybe he's a little similar to Shakir.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Stephon Diggs doesn't look the same. Gabe Davis may be gone. I just think a shot on Marquise Brown isn't bad for them.
Like a cheap option. Cheap option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the Chiefs down as my team for Marquise Brown. I think the Chiefs, I don't think are going to sign any of these tier 1 guys. And I think Michael Pittman's right on the brink of being a tier 1 wide receiver in this free agency class. You can make argument he's tier 2. But I think Chiefs are going to try get a receiver in this free agent class and let's go after Brown, who's on that second tier. And I would like the Chiefs to draft a receiver first round to pair Brown, Rice, and a rookie receiver together.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, they're going to get one somewhere in the free agency. It's just a matter of what the cost is at. So he's probably the best option of that second tier group.
How much? What do you think his market? Like, how much money do you think he gets paid on a yearly a range?
I bet he does a 1-year deal. I bet he does a deal like Juju got, like a 1-year, $10 million deal or something like that with incentives.
Yep.
I like my idea of I have an idea, maybe a little biased going K-State, but trading for Tyler Lockett. Yeah, I know that's probably a little more expensive, but
what are you giving up for him?
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but maybe they can open up some stuff for JSN. Then that's like my off-season wish is Tyler Lockett for the Chiefs.
Last receiver we'll talk about, Calvin Ridley.
Another guy who could be on the Chiefs' radar, but I suspect he'll be pricier than they expect. And I imagine, even though it didn't work out great for him his first year in Jacksonville, I imagine he ends up staying in Jacksonville because the quarterback got banged up. There's a lot. I think Doug Peterson can find some more ways to use him. He had some moments there where you thought he's really starting to turn it up. And look, that team is in a weird place right now, the way they finish the season. So I don't know if they want to be giving away guys who have potential. And I think obviously there is a factor here where they got to give a draft pick to Atlanta if they extend him. But he's in the house. They know who he is. I imagine they try to hold on to him.
Yeah, I have that too. That's the exact same reason. It's a terrible look. You get rid of him, and then the only good thing is you keep your second round pick. But I was like, they'll probably keep him. I don't like it though.
Yeah, I have the Ravens getting Ridley, and I know like cap space wise, it's kind of tight. I know they're like $5 million under the cap right now, and that's with the projected $242 million. So that may go up another $8 million. I think Ridley and Marquise Brown are kind of similar spot where I think Ridley can also sign a 1-year deal with somewhere. And I don't know if Jacksonville wants to give up their 2nd-round pick to keep Ridley. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
I feel like they'd have to draft someone 1st round then if they lose Ridley.
Yeah, were they in the 20s? They'd probably be around 18, 19.
Yeah, there's somewhere around that area.
And
Yeah,
you're not going to get one of the main 3, so you're like in the Mitchell, Franklin. Who else is up there?
Yeah, they're 17th overall.
Yeah.
So we'll move to running backs. We'll talk about 4 running backs here. The first one, Derrick Henry.
Man, it's a lot of miles on those legs.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's part of me feels like Dallas is the best place for him because their run game was so not physical, and they really miss Ezekiel Elliott. Tony Pollard was, as much as as excited as I was about what he could do, like he just is not a guy who's a top back, and he's probably may not even be there after this season. We'll see if they franchise him again, but I imagine Derrick Henry brings a certain level of toughness that they still need in that offense, especially near the goal line. It can make things easier on Dak and short yardage situations. I don't expect him to be a 1,800-yard rusher anymore, but if he could be close to like 800-900 and they can find a way to get another 800 out of the other guys, that's a pretty good deal. I'll put him in with the Cowboys.
I was thinking Dallas, and I kind of switched it up just to be a little different, I guess. But because he probably can't be RB1, even though Logan and I, we trade for him in our Dynasty League, and maybe we wish he still was. But so this wouldn't be as good for us, but the Packers, I feel like. I mean, A.J. Dillon's probably gone. They're a very young offense. Aaron Jones, I think they said, is expected to stay there.
Yep.
I think that could be it'd be quite the 1-2 duo. Obviously, 2 older guys, but true thunder lightning, like how we thought Thomas Jones and Jamal Charles were going to be when we were younger. But I think that'd be pretty good. They'd be able to switch things up in Green Bay, and really with those young guys, you'd have all these young receiving weapons, and you have 2 great vets in Aaron Jones and Henry in the backfield.
Okay. Yeah, I did see that.
I have Cowboys as well. I think because I'm not the biggest Dak Prescott guy, and I think they should lean more on a rushing attack. And I think if they had more of one last year, they would lean on it. But Tony Pollard's just not that type of running back, not physical enough. And he was coming off torn meniscus he was coming off of? I know it was like ankle.
Yeah, it was some kind of late knee injury.
I think he suffered against the 49ers.
Was it a broken leg? I think it was a broken leg.
It was a broken leg. It was a broken leg. That's right. So I think Cowboys make a lot of sense. I was kind of 50-50 on Cowboys-Ravens, but I think Derrick Henry, I think a better chance of him winning is to be on the NFC side. So that's why I kind of chose Dallas.
Dallas makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's probably more plausible than mine, but I just like mine.
That's what a podcast is for.
Yeah.
Next name, Saquon Barkley. And this is one that I was kind of torn on where I would put him.
Yeah, I just have a feeling the Giants are going to franchise him again. And he was so, he kind of wimped out, taking a tough stance. Like he didn't go the Jonathan Taylor route last year where he was going to start playing games and disappearing and all these injuries that can't be on the field. And all of a sudden now he's got a deal and he's healthy. Like he didn't want to do that. But I just feel like that team, they know how to pressure him, and he's all about his teammates in the locker room. And I imagine that the cost of trying to do it again with him, if he already caved once, he'll do it again. It's more of a personality thing. I just think they don't think he's tough enough to fight it. Stay with the Giants.
Yeah, I think I could see that a lot. I think he's moving on. And this is where I think the Texans should put their money. I mean, Singletary was great. I feel like I've seen on Twitter a lot of people are going Barkley Texans, and I like it. I think you give Stroud more of a rushing weapon who can also receive over another just pure receiving weapon. I think it's that it can add a whole nother element. He can expand on what Singletary did. And I think if you put Saquon with the Texans, that could be the best offense in football, in which it already was close. But that could push them over.
That'd be a pretty good offense.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Luke and I, we've had our arguments about Daniel Jones, and this wouldn't have been a
Hey.
discussion if they signed Saquon and tagged Jones.
Hey. Don't give up on the guy.
I gave up on him before that contract. I was
Yeah.
already out on him before that contract.
He has a playoff win. How many does Justin Fields have?
That was against a terrible Minnesota defense. It
doesn't matter.
I have Saquon going to the Chargers, and that was kind of a rumored thing with Jim Harbaugh. I think the Chargers are going to be much more physical this season.
Yeah.
And I think they're moving on from Mike Williams. They'll probably trade Joey Bosa just based on name value. I think they move on from Khalil Mack, and I think that should create enough cap space for them to afford Saquon.
I like that. Wow. I mean, they're going to run the football there. That's for sure. So,
do you think they go like offensive lineman with their first pick, or do you think to capitalize on physicality, or do you think they try to go for Brock Bowers?
I would imagine they're going to well, it depends on
or
who
trade
the
out the
lineman
pick
is.
too.
It depends on who the lineman is. If Brock Bowers is there, I would definitely think they would take Brock Bowers just because of what he can mean to Herbert. And Harbaugh is very aware of, he had Vernon Davis with the 49ers, with Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick. And he likes tight ends who are athletic. And so I would think they would take Bowers first, unless there's a stud there at OT they can't pass up.
And Bowers can also contribute to the running game as a blocker as well. So he's so good.
Yeah. He's gonna be a stud.
We'll talk about, I think, a former Chargers running back, Austin Eckler. Where do you guys have him going?
He's an interesting one because he's a lot older than people realize. He's been around for quite a bit. I've always liked him because of his versatility. He's not, to me, a true every down back. Let me see. Where can I put him at? That would make a lot of sense. I'll steal one from your brother. I'll put him in Baltimore.
Baltimore?
How's that?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll put him in Baltimore. Give Lamar another weapon out of the backfield, a guy who can be a runner, kind of move on from the Gus Bradley, Gus Edwards, and the other guy who's been there forever.
Keith Mitchell. I guess Keith Mitchell,
he's banged up.
His ACL, right?
He tore his ACL, yeah. So there's a weapon for you for Lamar Jackson in Baltimore.
That's exactly where I have him because, exactly. Keaton Mitchell's hurt. They just love to sign old guys too. If like Kenyon Drake, Melvin Gordon, they're probably missing someone else they signed. But
they had Le'Veon Bell was there for a second.
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell. Yep. Oh my goodness! But if you bring him in, maybe they bring back J.K. still. He was so good. That just sucks.
Can't stay healthy.
Yeah, and then Keaton Mitchell maybe comes back at some point. He looked really good. So maybe you have him there as the vet, and he just sort of cycles in here and there. So that's the best buy I thought. I don't think anyone's going to pay him a lot.
Cleveland could be an option too. I think about that with Nick Chubb and his injury. And
do you think they move off Nick Chubb at all? Do you think that's a possibility? I know they saved like $12 million or something like along those lines.
I just don't know how healthy he's going to be. That kind of injury, man.
He has 2 major injuries. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if keeping him is the smartest thing. I have Eckler to the Eagles.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Ravens, but Eagles, I think DeAndre Swift, I believe, is a free agent.
Yeah.
Or they kind of go through this revolving door of running backs, and I think Eckler would be a kind of nice fit. Letting Jalen Hurts kind of dump the ball off a little bit more, so Hurts can stay a little bit healthy. So I have Eckler to Philadelphia.
I don't even know if he's better than Kenny Gainwell, though.
Who, Eckler?
Yeah, now. Obviously past prime Eckler, but he did not look. I don't know.
He slowed down a little bit.
Yeah. That one run when he was going like
that one clip
was
against the Packers, and it looked like he's going to run for a touchdown, and he's got caught up.
I think that's like almost. I don't even think I'm a slow runner, but I may get close to that. That was terrible. But the Eagles, I don't know, because that's just like I liked it, but I thought about it, like they just get older, and like that's kind of a big problem with them. I don't know.
Yeah, Eagles have a weird offseason ahead of them.
But I could still see them doing it. No, yeah, they make no sense.
Last name, Josh Jacobs.
I feel like he stays in in Las Vegas. And maybe with a different management in charge and Antonio Pierce there pushing for him. He wants to be that physical bad boy team in the AFC West. You got to have a running back who can get it done for you, make that happen. And so, even though he's had a lot of miles in the NFL, he was not a guy who had a lot of miles in college. And so I think there's still a lot you can do with him. Give him a deal like what Jonathan Taylor got. Keep him happy because you don't know who your quarterback's going to be.
Yeah.
And so you don't know that. You better keep some guys around him who can make some plays. And so I feel like he's going to stay with the Raiders.
I would have had Raiders, but since I had Kirk Cousins Raiders, I feel like they wouldn't also pay Josh Jacobs. So I had to move on from the Raiders. And I'm going, Logan, with your route. I'm going with him to the Chargers for about all the reasons you said. Saquon, and in division. And I feel like also I feel like Saquon's gonna be more money. I don't know. I could be wrong. So
Than
Josh
Jacobs?
Yeah, on the market.
Yeah, I think Saquon's probably more expensive than Jacobs.
Yeah, so the Chargers have a lot of cap weirdness, and so maybe someone a little less expensive, keep the running game that Harbaugh wants. So I like Jacobs there. But if they don't get anyone like Kirk, the Raiders don't get anyone like Kirk or someone expensive, then I think he stays.
Okay.
Well, I have the Texans being really aggressive this offseason because I have Jacobs landing in Houston.
Well,
Wow. Houston, you guys really like Houston do a lot of stuff in this offseason.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Stroud, and I think they want that because Devin Singletary, I think, is a solid running back, and Dameon Pierce, you kind of saw him drop off a little bit from his rookie production. So I think they want to get Stroud, a running game that can support the passing game, and Jacobs, I think, is also more of a goal line back than Singletary is. So I think it's a good fit with Houston. I just don't know I think they have a lot of money. I think they should spend it, and I think they will spend it.
So it sounds like both of you guys think Houston's taking a big leap this year.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's going to be tough because now they're playing a first-place schedule, which it'll be tough. I was watching some show, and they brought up the Texans schedule, and it seemed pretty daunting. So,
Yes.
but I really like CJ Stroud. Like, I don't know what Trevor Lawrence is at this point. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, they could overtake. I think that I do have them signing Saquon, but I bet. I mean, you have a defensive head coach. I'd expect them to go more defensive in free agency. Besides my Saquon one, I don't know. Mike Evans and Josh Jacobs, man, Logan, that's a lot.
That's
I was saying, Josh Jacobs. I had Chicago at one point. I'm like, I don't know if Chicago's gonna make that move.
I thought about Chicago. I did think about Chicago.
I was thinking about Chicago. I don't think he'll stay in division unless he's like petty and he just wants to get back at the Raiders. But yeah, I don't know. That one was a tough one for me. I was all over the place on Josh Jacobs, but I finally landed on the Houston Texans.
What is their exact number? I'll look it up real quick. Their exact number.
For running backs?
Or I just look at the Texans.
Like cap space?
Oh, I think it's like 60 million. They're up there. They're like top 5 or top 6.
Yeah, it's close.
Oh, yeah. They're around 60. Yeah, they got a lot. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of money towards offense. I think they'd go maybe one offensive and more defense because their defense was fine. But if you get some vets with D'Amico Ryans and Willie Anderson.
Joey Bosa.
I would not want Joey Bosa at all. That guy's hurt. Yeah. Has he played 12 games the last 2 years or something like that? 12 or 13 games the last 2 years? Yeah,
he can't stay healthy. That's going to be interesting to see how Harbaugh's strength and conditioning people treat that team. They can find a way to keep guys on the field.
I remember that they said there's some report, and this just trusting stuff you see on Twitter, and don't remember who tweets it. Sometimes it can be scary, but they're like, I saw something like he had already sent out text, and like if you hadn't got a text, that means you're gone. I was always wishing that we'd get.
Where was that? Was that even from like a valid source?
Logan, this was like a month ago. I have no clue. But if that's true, I thought we'd get something like, "Oh, Bosa hasn't received a text yet," something funny like that.
Yeah,
we never got any of that.
Well, that will do it for. Yep. That will do it for our episode today. Jeff, we appreciate you coming on again, taking time to speak with us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today.
No, thank you guys. It's a pleasure. A lot of fun.
Yeah. Hopefully, you're our first guest on this podcast. So hopefully,
you want me bars low.
No, it's better than all our friends asking us, "Oh, you should."
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, no, you're not coming on here. We don't trust any of you.
That kills the podcast numbers.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we really appreciate.
Yeah, really appreciate you being on, and we'll be back next week, possibly with the mock draft episode. But until then, make sure to like the video, subscribe. And Jeff, you have a couple podcasts you have as well.
I do.
Is it Red, Gold, and Bold?
Yep.
And then
Red,
Too
Gold,
Deep
and Bold, and
podcast.
Too Deep. Yeah, with Ren
So
Patrill of 810, 8WHB, and Eric Eager of Sumer Sports.
So make sure to check those two out as well. But until then, have a great day and make sure to subscribe and like the video.